You're standing at the edge of a frozen valley, and the last kill your group made was 11 days ago. Your stomach isn't growling anymore. It went quiet 3 days back, which is worse. The berries are gone. The rivers are locked under a foot of ice. Somewhere out there is a herd of reindeer, but they've moved, and you don't know where. This isn't a bad week. This is a bad season, and it's only halfway through. Right now, you're probably within 20 feet of a refrigerator. You've likely eaten in the last 6 hours without thinking about it once. For most of human history, that gap between meals wasn't hours. It was weeks, sometimes months, and an entire species had to figure out how to stay alive across it. So how did ancient humans survive months at a time without a successful hunt? The first answer isn't clever technology. It's biology, and it's a strange one. In 2019, researchers Devjanee, Swain-Lenz, and Gregory Wray at Duke University compared human fat tissue to that of our closest primate relatives. Humans carry between 14 and 31% body fat, while wild chimpanzees and other primates average under 9%, some species closer to 0. That's not a small gap. That's the difference between a species built to burn through calories the moment it finds them and one built to carry a spare tank. Everyone assumes fat storage in early humans was a flaw, a side effect of an easier modern life. It's the opposite. That fat reserve is ancient, and it's an adaptation, not an accident. So what was it adapting to? Researchers studying the trait have proposed that the extra fat let early humans survive and keep reproducing through stretches when food simply wasn't available. A kind of biological insurance policy built directly into the body, centuries before anyone invented a pantry. A bonobo can't skip a week of meals and keep functioning. A human, historically, sometimes had to skip a month, but a body can only carry so much insurance. Fat reserves by weeks, not seasons. Something else had to fill the gap, and that something was storage. The decision to stop eating everything you find and bury some of it for a future self who's going to need it more. Here's where it gets strange. For a long time, archaeologists assumed organized food storage was a farming invention, something that showed up only after humans settled down and started planting crops on purpose. The evidence says otherwise. In excavations at Draa, near the Dead Sea in Jordan, archaeologists Ian Quite and Bill Finlayson uncovered the remains of granaries built roughly between 300 and 11,175 years ago, about 1,000 years before domesticated crops existed in that region at all. No farming, no agriculture, just hunter-gatherers who had already figured out how to store wild grain long enough to survive the gap between harvests. So what changed between a burned-out valley in an ice age and a lined pit full of grain in the Jordan Valley? Everything, and also nothing. The strategy is identical. You take a surplus when you have one, and you hide it from decay, from animals, from your own hunger, for a version of you that hasn't arrived yet. That same instinct shows up across continents and across thousands of years, adapted to whatever the land provided. On a hillside above Alaska's Nick Arm, archaeologists working with the region's Dene people uncovered a cache pit radiocarbon dated to roughly 960 years old, lined with birch bark and layered grasses, and found to still contain traces of preserved moose and caribou meat. That's not a farming culture. That's a hunting culture that learned the same lesson the grain storers in Jordan learned. The kill you make today has to feed the version of you that hasn't eaten in 3 weeks. There's a twist buried in that Alaska site that's easy to miss. The pit was almost 3.5 feet deep, dug into well-drained soil specifically so the ground itself would act as refrigeration. No one taught these communities the word microbiology. They didn't need it. They'd run the experiment for generations. This soil works, that soil doesn't, until the method was close to perfect, passed down as instinct dressed up as tradition. Cold storage is one weapon. It's not the only one. Long before refrigeration existed as an idea, human groups across the Arctic and subarctic developed a second strategy that had nothing to do with holes in the ground, mobility timed to the season itself. Groups didn't wait passively for scarcity to arrive. They moved toward it, ahead of it, positioning themselves near reliable winter bases, coastal inlets, sheltered river valleys. Places where a failed hunt on one day didn't mean starvation, because 3 other food sources were still within reach. So what happened when even that wasn't enough, when the season was bad everywhere, not just in one valley? This is where the real answer starts to surface, and it isn't a technology at all. It's other people. Ethnographic and archaeological research on circumpolar hunter-gatherer groups points to something consistent: food-sharing networks that spanned multiple families, sometimes multiple bands, specifically so that one group's bad month became everyone's problem to solve together. A failed hunt in one camp didn't have to be a death sentence, because the calories owed didn't have to come from your own storage pit. They could come from a neighbor's, with the understanding that the debt would run the other way eventually. Group size mattered here too. Winter bands tended to shrink, fewer mouths, easier provision provisioning while gatherings swelled again once a season turned generous. That wasn't disorganization. It was a population breathing in and out with the food supply, expanding when the land could support it and contracting the moment it couldn't, so no single winter camp ever had to feed more people than its stores could carry. Everyone pictures the ancient hunter as a lone figure with a spear, staring down a starving winter alone. The truth is closer to an insurance system with no paperwork. Reciprocity is survival technology, older than writing, older than farming, arguably older than language itself in its simplest form. The body stored fat, the ground stored meat and grain, the community stored obligation. 3 different kinds of insurance, stacked on top of each other, because any single one of them, alone, would eventually fail. So picture that valley again, the frozen one, 11 days since the last kill. It isn't just a story about a body running on reserves anymore. It's a fat store built over a lifetime, a cash pit dug the previous autumn, and a promise made to a neighboring family months before anyone knew it would be needed. All 3 working at once, so that no food today didn't mean no food this month. Somewhere along the way, humans traded that entire redundant interlocking system for a refrigerator that hums quietly in the next room. It's more convenient. It's also lonelier, because a fridge doesn't remember you the way a debt between 2 families does. The real weapon was never the spear or even the storage pit. It was the promise that someone else would feed you when you couldn't feed yourself, and that you'd do the same for them without being asked twice.